You didn't lose that relationship, that job, that opportunity by accident. Some part of you chose to. And you know exactly which moment I'm talking about. The text you sent at 2 a.m. that you knew would end things. The interview where your voice went strange and you couldn't stop it. The fight you started the night before everything was supposed to get better. You told yourself it was their fault, or bad timing, or just how things go. But somewhere beneath the story, you know, there's a pattern here. Not a single event, a sequence that keeps replaying with different faces and settings. The relationship that was finally healthy until you found a way to poison it. The promotion you undermined with a single careless email. The savings account you drained the month before you would have been free. Each time, you had an explanation that made sense. Each time, the explanation was a lie. This isn't about bad luck. It isn't about circumstances or other people or the universe conspiring. There's an author to this story, and they have your fingerprints. Self-sabotage is a strange crime because the perpetrator and the victim share a body. You are both the hand that reaches for what you want and the hand that slaps it away. And the worst part isn't the destruction. The worst part is the relief. That quiet exhale when the thing you wanted is finally, safely out of reach. You felt it, didn't you? When the relationship ended, underneath the grief, a tiny door closing softly. When the opportunity passed, beneath the disappointment, something unclenching. That relief is the fingerprint. It tells you the sabotage wasn't an accident, it was an escape. An escape from something that should have felt like everything you ever wanted, but didn't. Why would your brain treat getting what you want like a threat? Because somewhere along the way, it learned to. Your brain doesn't know the difference between a tiger and a promotion. To the oldest part of your nervous system, unfamiliar means unsafe. And nothing is more unfamiliar than getting exactly what you've been chasing. Deep in your brainstem sits a structure called the amygdala. It's roughly the size and shape of an almond. It evolved 300 million years before you learned to think. And it has one job: scan everything for danger. Not evaluate danger, not weigh danger, just detect it and react. It makes decisions in 12 milliseconds. Your conscious mind won't even know something happened for another half second. By then, the alarm is already ringing. Here's the problem. The amygdala doesn't distinguish between types of unfamiliar. New threat, new opportunity, new relationship. It's all just new. And new triggers the same cascade every time. Cortisol floods your bloodstream. Your heart rate spikes. Your breathing shallows. Your peripheral vision narrows. These are the exact same symptoms you'd feel if a car swerved toward you. But there's no car. There's just someone who loves you. Or a boss who finally recognized your work. Or a future that looks different from your past. The difference doesn't register. Because the amygdala doesn't read context, it reads arousal. And arousal means something in your world is different. Different for 300 million years has meant dead. So your body does what it's always done. It prepares to run or fight. But who do you fight when the threat is a job offer? Where do you run when the danger is intimacy? The energy has to go somewhere, so it turns inward. You start a fight with the person who loves you. You find a flaw in the opportunity. You convince yourself you never really wanted it anyway. And none of this feels like sabotage. It feels like survival. But the question remains, how did your brain learn what counts as familiar? The answer is a room you barely remember. A kitchen table where certain things were never said. A living room where you learned exactly how much space you were allowed to take up. Children are extraordinary engineers. They construct entire belief systems from fragments of evidence that adults would dismiss. A single raised eyebrow becomes a verdict. A moment of silence becomes a life sentence. And here's what most people never understand about their own childhood. You weren't just observing your family. You were conducting research. Every interaction was a data point. Every parental response was a clue. And the research question was always the same. What behavior keeps me safe here? Your brain was building a map. Not a map of geography, a map of permission. How happy am I allowed to be before something bad happens? How successful can I be before I threaten someone I need? How much love can I accept before the price becomes too high? These questions got answered for you before you could speak them. Maybe you brought home a perfect grade and watched your parents' face flicker with something that wasn't pride. You didn't know the word for it then, but your body learned to recognize it. Envy. And the lesson was instant. Your success is not safe. Maybe you expressed genuine joy and got told you were showing off. The lesson? Your happiness makes others uncomfortable. Maybe you were the strong one in a family that needed someone to be strong. The lesson? Your needs don't exist. Maybe you were the problem child, and the only attention you got was for failing. The lesson? Succeeding means disappearing. None of these lessons were spoken. That's what makes them so hard to unlearn. They were absorbed through atmosphere, through timing, through the weight of what wasn't said. Your child brain took these scattered signals and did what it does best. It built a rule. Not a conscious rule, a rule written in the body. A rule that says, this is as high as you're allowed to climb. This is as much love as you're allowed to feel. This is as happy as you're allowed to be. And you built that ceiling yourself, with the best materials your childhood had available. It kept you safe then, but you've never stopped living inside it. The comfort zone has a marketing problem. The name itself is a lie. It sounds like a hammock, a warm bath, a place you chose to rest. But you didn't choose it. It chose you, years before you had the language to object. And calling it comfortable is the cruelest part. Because comfort isn't what keeps you there. Familiarity is. Your nervous system doesn't distinguish between what feels good and what feels known. It only distinguishes between what it can predict and what it cannot. And given the choice, it will pick predictable suffering over unpredictable joy every single time. This is why people stay in jobs they hate, in cities that drain them, in relationships that diminish them. The misery is at least a misery they know. They've learned its rhythms, its rules, its particular cruelties. There's a strange competence that develops around surviving the familiar, and competence feels like safety, even when the thing you're competent at is being hurt. Think of the comfort zone not as a floor you rest on, but as a ceiling you crouch beneath. It's not the minimum you'll accept, it's the maximum you'll allow. And you've made it beautiful in there. You've hung pictures and arranged furniture and convinced yourself this is home. But home should have doors that open outward. Yours only lock from the inside. The tragedy is that no one else is keeping you there. There's no guard, no warden, no key held by someone else. Just you, pressing your back against a door that opens if you let it. And somehow, that makes it worse. Because if someone else built the walls, you could blame them, you could fight them. But you can't fight yourself without losing either way. This is the trap of self-made cages. And knowing it's self-made changes nothing at all. Here's the cruelest part of all. You probably already know everything I've told you. You've read the books about childhood wounds. You've sat in the therapist's chair and named the pattern out loud. You've journaled until your hand cramped. You've meditated, affirmed, and visualized your way through entire weekends. And then you did it anyway. You picked the fight that ended the relationship you wanted to keep. You missed the deadline that would have changed your career. You said the thing you knew you shouldn't say. Knowing didn't stop it. Knowing never stops it. This is the part nobody warns you about. Self-awareness is not self-control. Insight is not override. You can watch yourself fall and still not catch yourself. The sabotage doesn't happen in the part of your brain where you think. It happens below thought, in the ancient wiring that kept your ancestors alive. That wiring doesn't understand language. It doesn't understand therapy. It only understands threat and safety, familiar and foreign. And when unfamiliar success arrives, it screams danger in a voice louder than reason. Your intelligent mind is a tenant in a building owned by something older. And when the owner wants you out, you go. The smartest people often sabotage the hardest, because intelligence gives you more sophisticated ways to explain why you had to do it. More elegant rationalizations for why leaving was brave. More convincing stories about why the timing was wrong. Intelligence becomes the sabotage's lawyer. It argues on behalf of your worst instincts and makes them sound reasonable. Therapy can name the wound without healing the reflex. You can know exactly why you flinch and still flinch every time. Naming the demon doesn't banish it. It just means you know what to call the thing that's destroying you. This is why so many people cycle through insight and relapse. They understand more with each turn, but change nothing. Because understanding is a spectator sport. Change is a contact one, and the contact has to happen in the moment the sabotage wants to fire. That moment leaves a trace if you know where to look. There's a window. Between the impulse and the act, there's a space most people never notice. It lasts maybe 3 seconds, sometimes less. But in those 3 seconds, your body tells you everything. The first signal is in your chest, a tightening that feels like urgency, like you have to do something right now. That urgency is the lie. Nothing about sending that text at 2 in the morning is actually urgent. Nothing about quitting the job before the promotion is announced requires immediate action. But your nervous system doesn't know that. To your nervous system, this is an emergency. The second signal is a sudden clarity. You suddenly see exactly what you need to do. The relationship isn't right. The job isn't right. The city isn't right. It feels like insight. It feels like finally being honest with yourself. But real insight doesn't show up at 2 in the morning when you can't sleep. Real insight doesn't come with a racing heart. The third signal is the story that appears. Within seconds of the impulse, your mind generates a perfect explanation. A narrative so compelling, it sounds like wisdom. I deserve better than this. They never really appreciated me anyway. It was never going to work out. Notice how the story always arrives after the decision has already been made. The fourth signal is the relief. The moment you commit to the sabotage, something in you relaxes. The tightness in your chest dissolves. You feel like yourself again. That relief is the tell. Because you should not feel relieved after destroying something good. Unless what you destroyed was never the threat. The window exists. The question is whether you can stay in it long enough to choose differently. Here's the truth nobody wants to hear. The discomfort doesn't go away. You don't defeat the alarm system. You learn to sit with the ringing. The brain that spent decades building this ceiling will not tear it down in a single revelation. This is not about fixing yourself. It's about expanding your tolerance for what you already are. The window between impulse and action can be widened, not through willpower, but through practice. Every time you notice the sabotage impulse and don't act on it, the window grows by a fraction of a second. A fraction of a second is everything. In that fraction, you can name what's happening. You can say, "This is the alarm," and the alarm is not the truth. The feeling of wrongness does not mean something is wrong. You have to let the success stay long enough to become familiar. This is harder than it sounds. You will feel like a fraud in rooms you've earned entry to. You will feel like a trespasser in love you deserve. You will feel like someone who stole a life that was meant for someone else. Stay anyway. Let the discomfort wash over you without becoming instruction. Your nervous system is not your advisor. It's a messenger with outdated maps. The child who built the ceiling didn't know what you know now. You can thank them for their protection and still outgrow their blueprints. The fire doesn't burn you. It only feels like it will. And the only way to learn this is to stay in it and survive. You already have. The scars you've been hiding are proof you walked through flames most people can't even imagine.